last week we asked you guys to ask us questions about ourselves, about the show, etc. Since we were celebrating our 100th episode, we didn't get to all those questions, so we're going to answer the rest of them now. Then, for the remainder of the show, we are going to discuss some random news, but not really news items. So just 4 little tiny tidbits of kind of news, and we'll get to those after this. So let's go through the questions. So first of all, this is a question from Sarah Songbird, and she says, remember me? I'm kind of hard to forget. Real question time. I know that Panem October never happened, and that made me incredibly sad, but am I still allowed to flirt mercilessly with Game Maker Rowan? Because we shared a night in my cave one time, and that was incredible.
Well, first of all, of course we remember Sarah Songbird. How could we forget? You were the feature of one of our best episodes, and you were an incredible contributor. We hope you'll listen more often these days. I know life gets a hold of you, but thank you for submitting the question. Savanna, do you want to take that one? Should Ellie take that one? What should we do here?
Well, I think that, we can certainly get in touch with him and ask him, but, I think that Game Maker Rowan will always be a bit of a flirt, even if he is someday married. I think he'll always be willing to flirt with lovely young girls like you, Sarah Songbird. I think you're still allowed to, but Ellie, what do you say?
Sure. Game Maker Rowan is definitely a character. He will definitely go for some flirting.
Well, he will.
That's true, and that deep voice it's a turn on, isn't it, when he talks like that?
Are you asking me? Because the answer is no.
No, not for Savanna. It does not do it for Savanna.
I don't do the Darth Vader style.
Yeah, it's a little much for me.
It's a bit intimidating. But yeah, so Sarah, I feel like this is turning into kind of like one of those love advice radio shows or something. So Sarah, what I think you should do is get back in touch with Game Maker Rowan. You'll never know until you ask. Okay, so let's move on. This is from Miranda. I'm a new Fireside Chat fan, and let me just say, love ya. She asked a question last week, but this is another question from her. How do you confront a tribute if they have only seen the movie?
You want me to try to answer that one?
Yeah, or Bailey, maybe, since I feel like
let's let Bailey take this one.
Yeah, let's give Bailey some answer time here.
Well, I feel like I'm a big advocate of reading a book before and then going, and I really like to judge movies based off of books just to see how they're different. And so I guess I would try to play to that as, getting someone to say, oh, well, maybe don't you just want to see how it's different from the book at least?
I think that's probably a pretty good approach because, if they like the movie, there is absolutely no way that they would not like the book because the book just serves to enhance the film and fill in gaps and things like that. So I think that that's probably a really good approach. And if it's someone who doesn't, because there are a lot of people out there who don't really enjoy reading, and in fact, the Hunger Games, I know for a lot of young people around the country, it's kind of been their gateway book. The Hunger Games is it's written in such an exciting and suspenseful and cinematic way. I think that, it would appeal. And the language is fairly simple, so, yeah, those are some good suggestions. Anyone else have any ideas?
Just tell them the book is always better.
Yeah, because it is.
Yeah, if you like the movie, you'll love the book in the end. It's harder for movies to ruin books than it is for books to ruin movies.
Yeah.
I say you host a huge screening of the Hunger Games movie, and then when everyone's settled into their seats, instead of playing the movie, you hand out copies of the book and then force them to read one chapter.
Fun.
Okay.
And then they'll be hooked.
Okay, let's move on to another question. This is from Bannon or Banan. I don't know how you pronounce your name, but I hope one of those was correct. Do you really think Katniss's reel was real? Anyone?
Can I answer this?
Yes.
We're talking about the end of the book, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I have a lot of several hour-long rants about this one topic because that line actually turned me off of the entire series for about 3 days. I was so mad, mostly because the way I see it, and I know people argue with me about this all the time, but the way I see it, I was completely convinced that Katniss was in love with Peeta by the end of the second book. Completely convinced. Beginning of the third one, completely convinced. But then there's that moment where she decides, I'm not going to be in love with him anymore. And she's not. And she doesn't care, and it's awful, and it's heartbreaking, and it's, yeah. And then you slowly start to see that Peeta is falling in love with Katniss again. But you don't see her falling in love with him again. Maybe, like, just beginning to, but not really. So then when we get to the end, I'm convinced that Peeta's in love with her again, but I'm not convinced at all that she's in love with him again. So while this takes place a while later, so I don't know if she was lying about it. I don't think she was lying. I was just really pissed off that I couldn't see it before she finally said it, because that was the first time she actually said it in the series, and I was not convinced. But anyway, that's my rant.
Well, I had the complete opposite reaction to that. I mean, for me, it was like her finally realizing what she had felt all along, but just didn't realize or was too afraid to realize. I mean, I am totally convinced that her real was real, and for me, that made the entire series feel good finally, because the entire time you just feel so depressed because, you know, he's chasing after her, she loses him, and you know, everything that you went over, I mean, that was so frustrating, you know, it just felt like they're star-crossed lovers for real. And then, like, years later, that's how long it takes for her to recover from the damage that the Capitol did to her, you know. And to me, that just, it was like Snape's chapter for the Hunger Games for me. You know, it was like finally like giving me the satisfaction that I've been waiting for the whole time.
No, I completely agree with that. My problem was just I wanted like one or two scenes to actually prove to me that she was in love with him before she actually said it.
Well, I mean, that's a problem with Mockingjay in general, right? I mean, it's just like full of info dumps all over the place, right?
I'm trying to articulate my opinion. I feel like I actually share both of your opinions because I definitely, Ellie, agree with what you're saying, and I felt that way myself while reading. But Crystal, I also think you are, you know, you have some valid points as well. It's Mockingjay is kind of a confusing book, and I think that's why a lot of people didn't enjoy it. You know, which is unfortunate, but there are a lot of fans out there who didn't like Mockingjay as much, and I think that's a main reason for a lot of them. Adam, you know, do you have any thoughts on this? I know you're the big romantic. Did you get a sense of Katniss's love before that moment?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had that sense the entire the entire book series. Attribute that to being a romantic if you want to, but the fact of the matter is, but I was convinced that Peeta was the man for her, that she would come to appreciate, really from the moment he got reaped, just from the way it was written. And that's why I think I've mentioned this before on the show. I was so surprised when the event that Ariel and I went to, Ariel, I'm sure you remember this well, when Mockingjay book was released, that the little kids, it seemed like there were more Gale fans than Peeta fans. And I was shocked. And I thought, to me, it was so obvious that it was going to be Peeta the whole time, just in the way I was reading it. And so, yes, call me a sucker. I totally bought into it. And I think life is like dandelions for those two.
Oh, that's very sweet.
I can kind of recall another book experience similar to what Ellie's talking about, because there was this book series that I read a long time ago called Dragonlance, and there was this character that I really liked. She was like an elven princess. Her name was Lorana, and she was like very like wimpy, and she was just very princessy. And then in the next book, she became like this great war hero, and like the process of her getting to that point was basically summarized in a poem. And since I can't stand poems in books, I was so pissed that like all her glorious stories leading her to become the great character that she was, were just in like a few pages that I didn't even want to read. So, I mean, is that what you're talking about, Ellie? Is that you're frustrated that you didn't get to see her process, or?
Yeah, like I don't question. Like I was Team Peeta 100%. I never questioned that she would end up with Peeta. Never a question in my mind. I hate Gale, but it's never a question in my mind. My problem was that I was not convinced that her feelings were there before she said it.
She does kind of leave a lot to our imaginations, right? I mean,
it's interesting that Katniss is pretty, like, her internal monologue throughout the series is pretty open. You know, you would think you would get more about that, you know, more about her feelings towards Peeta. It's kind of like surprising that she was, but maybe that's, you know, maybe that's because she herself was sort of closed off to that thought, you know, for most of that period.
I think part of it was the fact that she was never willing to admit it to herself.
Right.
But that's again my problem, because I did see it earlier in the series, but there was a while when I didn't, and so I wanted to be able to see it, and I wanted her to be able to accept it on her own before she said it out loud.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts? Rebekah, Ariel?
I think it's been covered.
Okay.
Yeah,